Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. One particularly curious section of Book 2 of Cicero's On the Nature of the Gods has to do with the stars. And we'll talk about what stars mean in just a moment because it's not exactly what we mean by stars. But this is part of an extended argument for the existence not just of God, but of gods plural. And the stars, at least from the Stoic perspective presented by Balbus, are in fact divine beings. And this was not uncommon in the ancient world, thinking that these heavenly bodies that exhibited regularity were in fact divine beings. And by the way, stars doesn't just mean what we typically think of as all of these things that we look up in the night sky and they're these little tiny dots. It includes the sun, it includes the moon, it includes the planets, at least the ones that they actually could see with the naked eye. All of those are heavenly bodies, all of those are stars, and they're all conceived of as essentially being the same kinds of things. So he's going to start this discussion in a rather interesting way, saying, having perceived the divinity of the world, mundi divinitate, we must also assign the same divinity, eadem divinitas, right, to the heavenly bodies, sideribus, right? So that could be stars, that could also be constellations as well. And he says these are formed from the most mobile or movable and the purest, the least mixed with other things, part of what he calls the ether. And this is, sort of an element that's the highest. Perhaps it's the element of fire, but a special kind. Perhaps it's a fifth element. We don't have to worry too much about that. Because he is going to talk about fire. He says that the stars are of a fiery heat and translucent throughout. So because of this, they have the fullest right, rectissime, that we can speak in the best sense, of them being living beings, animantia. A little bit later, he'll actually use the word animal, animal, for them as well. And these are living beings that both have sensation, they sense, right? Sentire, and they understand. Sentire could be translated as perceive. They don't have eyeballs or ears or anything like that, but they see the environment that they're in some way, and they understand it, intelligere. So this means that the stars are, very intelligent beings, probably beyond us, just like the world is. And he goes on to talk about fire. He says that the stars consist entirely of fire. Cleanthes holds to be established by evidence of two of the senses, those of touch and sight. Hard to figure out how we could actually touch a star, but certainly sight. And he's thinking of the sun in particular, right? So the sun is being used as a stand-in for all the other stars or heavenly bodies here. He says the radiance of the sun is more brilliant than that of any fire, and its rays warm us up. Sometimes they actually burn us. And so then he has to clarify, okay, well, what kind of fire are we talking about? And he says that the sun is not the kind of fire that serves the needs of daily life. That's also a destructive agency, consuming everything, and wherever it spreads, it routs and scatters everything. There's a different kind of fire that we find in living bodies, according to the physics of that time. And he says that this is the glow of life and health. It's the universal preservative, giving nourishment, fostering growth, sustaining, bestowing sensation. Now, we probably wouldn't think of that as fire in the present day. It's hard to think of what this would actually correspond to for us, but that's the way that they thought of it back then. So if you've got that framework, then it kind of makes sense. And so the sun resembles the fire found in living bodies, but you could think of it as like a purer kind of fire that's not mixed with all the other elements. And he's going to say it's the same thing with the other stars, the reliqua astra, all the other heavenly bodies, the planets, right, the things that we actually do call stars. They all have their origin in the fiery heat of the heavens, as he's going to say. And because of that, they have a certain kind of, mobility and purity, as we said. So the stars, and here he'll actually say, the stars are animals that are born in the ether. Now, animal, not like, snakes and doggies and us or anything like that. They are animal in the sense that they are animate. They are things that move, things that perceive, things that do, right, that act. So they are a special kind, and they do, as he's going to stress over and over again, have sensation and intelligence, these two really important aspects. And he says, from this, it follows that the stars are to be reckoned as gods. So they're heavenly objects, they're greater than us, they are purer than us, they are smarter than us as well, they probably perceive better than we do as well. And he goes on and he's going to say, the consciousness and intelligence of the stars, so here's another argument, is exhibited by their order, their ordo, and their regularity, constantia. That's also a term that's used of human beings. Constantia is a subvirtue of temperance, or sometimes it's used as a stand-in for temperance. So we can say the stars are actually virtuous in a certain way. And he says that their regular and rhythmical motion is impossible without some sort of, what's translated here as design, concilio. That can also be translated as plan, intention. The stars move in regular ways that we can observe because on some level, that's what they want to do. So this is where we get to a really interesting argument that's going to be made here. He says that they don't show any trace of variation, and the order and eternal regularity of the constellations, he's going to say, rule out two possibilities. It's not a thing that's just from nature, so natura, right? Why? Because it is full of reason or rationality, plena ratio, right? Highly rational is another way to translate it. And it can't be just because of chance or randomness, fortunam. Why? Because chance loves variation, varietate, and doesn't like regularity. So we see regularity, it can't just be chance, but it's not just natural processes, the way that we typically think of that in the present, right? What is actually going on there? So here he's going to say, what is another possibility? They act freely, sponte, right? They have a certain kind of freedom. And they even act willingly. They choose in some way. And he uses the word voluntas, which is the word for the will. Later on, he's going to conclude that these motions of heavenly bodies are voluntary, voluntarius, right? So he's ruling out the other possibilities. It's not nature, it's not chance. It has to be something intentional. And this is being used to argue, as we're going to see, there's a conclusion. Anyone who sees this truth, what is this truth? The truth that the stars are carrying out their regular movements by their own choice. Anybody who sees this truth would show not only, he says, ignorance, but wickedness, impie faciat, if they denied the existence of the gods. Then he clarifies a little bit. It doesn't make much difference whether he denies their existence or deprives them of providential care and activity. So he's going to conclude the existence of the gods is so manifest, perspicuum, that I can scarcely deem one who denies it to be of sound mind. So the world is God. The stars are also gods. And we could say like the entire cosmos itself is capital G, God. And Cicero's having the Stoic give what seem to be long established Stoic arguments for these particular assertions.